Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you the best fountain pens to use for drawing. More specifically, I'm going to show you the different types of fountain pens that you can use for drawing, for sketching, so that you can decide which pen is best or most suitable for you, for the type of art or drawings that you want to draw. This video that you're watching now is actually a condensed version of this 40-minute video that I have published 5 years ago on the same subject. So this video is just a short beginner's guide to fountain pens from the perspective of an artist. So why would you want to use fountain pens for drawing? Well, fountain pens are available with different types of nibs. I would categorize fountain pens or fountain pen nibs into 3 broad categories. So the first type of pen nib would be those that can produce lines of consistent width. So this is a fine nib, and this is an extra fine nib. So you can see the difference in the thickness of the lines. Nibs are available with different widths, from extra fine to medium and broad. Some people may prefer really thin lines, so they would probably like fountain pens with EF nibs. Some prefer broader lines. So choosing a fountain pen, it's really a personal preference. When the line widths are consistent, you get very consistent and predictable performance. If the line widths are consistent throughout, sometimes the drawing may look boring. The keyword being may. Here's another sketch drawn with lines with consistent width, and I have watercolor applied over the line art. Now there is nothing right or wrong with drawing with uniform lines. It's just a personal preference. For pen ink and watercolor sketches, sometimes when the lines are thick, the focus may go to the line. The look and feel of drawing with thinner lines is different compared to drawing with thicker lines. With thin lines, you can afford to draw more details because the lines are thinner. You can squeeze in more details. However, the look, it's really different. So you will have to probably try both thin and thick lines to see what kind of lines you prefer. Drawings made with thinner lines usually look more delicate to me. Here's an example of a sketch drawn with EF lines. The extra fine lines allow me to draw little details like this very easily. And I can write these letters here very easily as well. This would not be possible with thicker lines. Unless it's mentioned specifically, most fountain pen nibs will produce consistent line widths. This pen that I'm using, this is the Pelikan M200 fountain pen, and the one with the EF nib, this is the Pilot penmanship. These are not the best pens because, again, best is subjective. These are just 2 pens that I happen to have with me. I've been using this for many years. My general advice when it comes to buying fountain pens is to get something that's affordable if you are a beginner. Some of the brands that I recommend would be Lamy Safari, and this particular one has a transparent body that allows me to see how much ink is in the pen. And make sure you buy a fountain pen that comes with an ink converter, or at least buy the ink converter separately. This will allow you to refill the fountain pen easily, and you can use your own ink with your fountain pen. So Lamy Safari is a good brand. Safari, by the way, is just one of the many pens made by Lamy. There are just too many brands for me to recommend one by one in this video, so just check out the list of recommended pens that I have prepared for you in the video description below. The second type of fountain pens would be those that have nibs that can produce thin and thick lines. So let's take a look at this one. This pen has a flex nib. Sometimes you can't really tell whether or not the nib can flex just by looking at it. Flex nibs are more versatile because you can get thin lines like this, and when you press down harder, when you apply more pressure, you can get thicker lines like this. So you can actually get thin and thick lines together. So when you're drawing, you can press down harder to get thicker lines. And this thin and thick line combination will create variation with your line art. So when you see lines that taper like this, it's very nice. This is considered an EF nib, so the lines are thin by default. You can also get pens with broad nibs that flex. Take a look at this sketch. For people in the foreground, I actually drew them with thicker lines. For people in the background here, I drew them with much thinner lines, and for details in the background, those were also drawn with thinner lines. Drawing a sketch like this is going to be very challenging with a flex nib like this, because by default, you're going to get an extra fine line, and many of the elements here in the foreground were drawn with thicker lines, which means if I were to draw this pen, I have to press down and draw for all these foreground elements. So this sketch is going to be quite challenging to draw with a flex nib. So that sketch earlier was just drawn with a fine nib, and I turned the fountain pen nib upside down like this to draw the thinner lines in the background. You have to use the appropriate pen nib for the effect that you are looking for. Otherwise, it's going to make the drawing process more challenging than it needs to be. This fountain pen is called Blue Deal. Now, this fountain pen actually has the same flex as a pen holder with zebra G nib, the type of nibs that are quite popular for drawing manga, except this fountain pen, it doesn't have the inconvenience of having to continuously dip into an ink bottle to reload, because it comes with an ink converter inside. And the pen with the broader nib, that's the Noodler's Nippon set. Noodler's make other flex nib pens as well. This is a Namiki Falcon, which is a flex nib. So how flex nib works is when you press down, the tines will separate. That's how you get the thicker lines. But you shouldn't press down like too hard, because it can bend the nib beyond repair. This is a FPR Himalaya V2, which also has a flex nib. Now, if you cannot get the names of the pens, just check out the list in the video description below. And this is a Pilot Custom 743 with a Falcon nib as well, also a flex nib. The third type of pens are those that come with a bent nib. This is also called a fude nib. This nib also allows you to vary line widths, and here you vary the line widths by changing how you hold the pen or how you tilt the pen. These are actually quite fun to use because the line widths, they will change sometimes quite dramatically. And also you get variation automatically. You don't have to think about pressing down to get thicker lines, because when you're drawing or writing, the way you hold the pen is always changing, and that itself will produce thin and thick lines automatically for you. So this is one of my favorite type of pen nibs. This one that I'm using, it's made by a Chinese company called Duke, and the model number is 209. This is another pen also made by Duke. Now this one, the nib is even more extravagant. The nib is much larger, so this one can produce a really thick line. When I hold this pen more vertically, I get thin lines like this, and when I tilt, I get really broad strokes. So this sketch was drawn with this pen. So this sketch has a good mix of thin and thick lines. So you can see the thin lines here for the details. I use the thicker lines for the outline. And because the lines, they can vary in terms of thickness, it makes this sketch look really interesting because of the line art. The downside to fude nib pens is they can use a lot of ink, so you are going to use up ink very quickly. Some of the brands that make fude nibs are Duke, there is Hero, there is also another brand called Jinhao, and Sailor, the Japanese fountain pen company. They also make fude nibs. However, not all fude nibs are good. This one, in this plastic body, the nib, it's bent quite sharply, so it's not that smooth when it comes to drawing. Sailor do make smoother nibs as well, but those are more expensive. So those are the three types of fountain pens or fountain pen nibs that you can use for drawing. There are actually many other types of fountain pen nibs that I did not mention in this video because those specialty nibs, they are not as easy to draw with compared to these three fountain pen nibs that I've shown you. The ones that can produce consistent waves, the flex nib, and the fude nib. Do check out the list of recommended pens that I have prepared for you in the video description below if you want specific recommendations. Alright, I hope this video is helpful. If you want to watch more fountain pen or drawing videos, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. Bye.